Direct News TV. January 31, 2024. Israel's war on Gaza Khan Younis hospitals out of food. The Gaza Health Ministry says Nasser and Al-Amal hospitals have run out of food as the Israeli siege of the Khan Younis medical centers continues. UN Relief Chief Griffiths tells Security Council aid to Gaza continues to be blocked. Ceasefire needed for ICJ ruling to be implemented, Mansour. In an address to the UN Security Council, Palestinian envoy Riyad Mansour says that for the court's provisional measures to be implemented, there must be a ceasefire in Gaza. Last week, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to implement measures to prevent genocide as it carries out its war on Gaza. Although the burden is on Israel to implement the 6 provisional measures, you are not assuming your responsibility in adopting a resolution to call for a ceasefire, to allow the work and provisional measures ordered by the court to be implemented, Mansour said. When are you going to act accordingly if you are serious about respecting your obligations of honoring the ruling of the court? That requires a ceasefire so that Israel can implement it, regardless of whether it can or not, he continued. From day one we have said that this can only be accomplished with a ceasefire, and we keep repeating this. UNRWA forced to leave Khan Younis, says agency's Gaza chief. UNRWA says that its staff, along with thousands of the already displaced Gaza population, have been forced to flee Khan Younis due to intense fighting over the last 8 days. We've lost a health clinic, major shelters, facilities that were supporting the people of Khan Younis, said Thomas White, UNRWA's Director of Gaza Affairs. PRCS says it is still searching for a 6-year-old girl and the ambulance crew. The Palestine Red Crescent has said that it continues to seek answers regarding the fate of a 6-year-old girl named Hind Hamadeh who telephoned for help after Israeli forces fired on a car carrying her family, killing all of them except her. A PRCS ambulance sent to assist her has also gone missing. PRCS released an audio recording on Tuesday, in which Hind's 15-year-old sister Layan can be heard telling a dispatch worker that Israeli forces have surrounded their vehicle. Gunfire can then be heard, along with screaming, before the line goes silent. Hind then called and asked for someone to come and rescue her. 48 hours passed and the fate of 6-year-old Hind and the PRCS ambulance crew that headed out to rescue her is still unknown. We need to know what happened, the group said in a social media post. We call on the international community to help. To intervene to protect #civilians and #healthcare workers. UN report says Gaza unemployment rate nearly 80%. A report by the UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has found that Israel's campaign in Gaza precipitated a 24% contraction in gross domestic product, GDP, and has made the strip uninhabitable. Unemployment in December rose to 79.3%. The UNCTAD report states that, even if the war ends immediately and Gaza returns to previous growth trends of 0.4% each year, pre-war GDP levels will not be restored until 2092. The level of destruction from the latest Israeli military operation rendered Gaza uninhabitable, it states. I think the main takeaway from the report is that the level of destruction that we're witnessing in Gaza is unprecedented. It's going to take a lot of efforts from the international community for the rebuilding and recovery in Gaza, said Rami Alizeh, an economist who works on the occupied Palestinian territories at UNCTAD. Israeli army announces death of soldier in northern Gaza. It has identified him as a commander in the Israeli Air Force's elite Shaldag unit. The army said that this brings the toll of killed troops in the ground offensive on Gaza to 224. Interpretations of the International Court of Justice's ruling varied. The interpretations of the ICJ's ruling from the Algerian and U.S. ambassadors are very different from others I've spoken to on the Security Council. For example, I spoke to the Chinese ambassador at the start of the meeting. He said that when you look at the rulings made by the ICJ, for any of those actually to make sense, to be properly imposed, you need a ceasefire. The U.S. ambassador was very clear. She said the court did not order an immediate ceasefire, and she said the court did not say that Israel violated the Genocide Convention. I was there on Friday. What the court did say is that South Africa's claim that actions had been taken by Israel that could be actions to lead to genocide were plausible. So, a very different legal reading read out there by the U.S. ambassador than many other legal scholars would have, of what happened on Friday at The Hague. Israeli ambassador to Sweden says embassy faced attempted attack. Israel's ambassador to Sweden Ziv Kullman has said that Israel's embassy in Stockholm faced an attempted attack after reports of a dangerous object from the Stockholm police earlier. Today we were subject to an attempted attack against the Embassy of Israel in Stockholm and its employees, Kullman said in a social media post. We thank the Swedish authorities for their swift response. We will not be intimidated by terror. U.S. ambassador to the UN says ICJ ruling reaffirms U.S. stance on Gaza. Linda Thomas-Greenfield said on Wednesday that the ICJ ruling is consistent with the U.S. approach to Gaza and that conditions for a ceasefire do not exist. Thomas-Greenfield also says that the U.S. is working to facilitate the delivery of more aid into Gaza, sidestepping reports that Israel has consistently blocked UN aid delivery efforts. Some members have argued that the provisional measures ordered by the ICJ are a reason to change course. But in many ways, the court's measures reaffirmed the framework that we put in place, she said, adding that the measures are consistent with the United States' view that Israel has the right to take action by international humanitarian law. The U.S. has consistently offered Israel diplomatic support throughout the war, despite growing scrutiny of abuses by Israeli forces and calls for a ceasefire from humanitarian groups. South Africa's top diplomat wants UN to assume greater role after ruling similar to ICJ. South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor says that South Africa has done everything it can and now it is up to the global community to play its part, to hold Israel accountable. She also said the United Nations should not just monitor the rulings from places like the ICJ, but enforce them. There should be a greater implementation role rather than peacekeeping. South Africa has also approached the International Criminal Court to hold Israeli individuals accountable. Pandor said she is concerned by the slow progress, but they are pushing the ICC to do more regarding the prosecutions. UN Relief Chief, aid to Gaza continues to be blocked. Martin Griffiths has finished his briefing to the Security Council. Here are some final points he made. There are seriously injured or sick patients unable to receive cures in Gaza for whom medical evacuations should be swiftly facilitated. We know this is a matter of daily negotiations in the COGAT group, which meets daily to discuss all the matters of logistics and plans for the humanitarian operation. These evacuations are in line with international humanitarian law, which in certain circumstances encourages arrangements for the evacuation of the wounded and sick, persons with disabilities, older children and pregnant women. I also want to emphasize that any persons displaced from Gaza must be given the right to voluntarily return as international law demands. The ability of the humanitarian community to reach the people of Gaza with relief remains grossly inadequate, and to say it is grossly inadequate is grossly inadequate. It's much more difficult than that. We continue to face the issue of the rejection for entry of much-needed items into Gaza by Israel for reasons which, at least for us, are unclear and inconsistent. Israeli soldiers mock Palestinians in Gaza. In this clip, Israeli soldiers are heard taunting Palestinian women and children as they pass a checkpoint in southern Gaza. More from Griffiths. Here is some more of what the UN's relief chief said during his briefing to the Security Council. Heavy rains are flooding the makeshift tent camps, forcing children, parents, and the elderly to sleep in the mud. Clean water is almost completely inaccessible. With little public health support available, preventable diseases are rife, will continue to spread, and will become, if they have not already become, the chief killer of Gaza Palestinians. The further spread of hostilities southwards along with the increasing deprivation and desperation of people can only be expected to increase the pressure for mass displacement into other countries, the so-called spillover. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.